People always say your parents shape who you become. But what if the person who raised you was never really your parent at all? All my life, it was just me and my dad. No mother, no big family, just the two of us against the world. He used to say that made us special. And for a long time, I believed him. I believed every bedtime story, every I love you, every promise that I was safe. But safety can be a lie. Because sometimes the people who protect you the most are the ones you need protection from. I didn't find out the truth all at once. It came slowly, through things I wasn't meant to see, questions I wasn't supposed to ask. And by the time I understood who he really was, it was already too late to unknow it. Growing up, it was always just me and my dad. No mother, no extended family. Just us, two people in a small house with creaky floors and a leaky roof, tucked at the edge of town. He used to tell me, "You and me against the world, kid." And for a long time, that was enough. He wasn't the kind of man people noticed in crowds. He kept to himself, quiet but warm, always with a faint smile that seemed to hide something. Not sadness exactly, just something unspoken. He fixed cars for a living, spent his evenings tinkering in the garage, humming old songs under his breath. The smell of oil and coffee became what home meant to me. Every morning, he'd fry eggs a little too long, burning the edges just the way I liked. We'd sit in silence, listening to the radio static and pretending it was music. That was our rhythm, comfortable, predictable, safe. He never liked questions. Not about the past, not about my mother, not even about birthdays. Whenever I asked about when I was born, he'd just say, "That was the best day of my life," and smile like that answer should be enough. As a kid, it was. He never mentioned my mother, and I learned not to either. I'd see other kids with theirs, hugs at pickup, lunches packed with care, birthday parties full of laughter, and I'd wonder if she ever thought about me. If she was out there somewhere, missing the boy she left behind. Once, I asked him if she was still alive. He froze for a second, spat his coffee into the sink and said, "Don't ever ask me that again." His tone wasn't angry but final, like the sound of a door locking. I remember feeling guilty for even asking. After all, he was everything to me, my whole world. But as I got older, little things started to feel off. He never let me look through old photos. Said he didn't like living in the past. We didn't have family visits, ever. No aunts, no cousins, no one dropping by for holidays. Even our neighbors didn't know much about him. I used to think that was normal, that some families were just small, quiet, private. But sometimes I'd catch him watching me with this expression I couldn't quite read, like he was trying to memorize me. His eyes would soften, then quickly turn away, as if he'd been caught doing something wrong. When I turned 15, I asked if I could get a passport for a school trip. He said no, too expensive. I didn't argue, but the next day, I found a half-torn envelope in the trash. It was from the passport office. My application had been returned for missing information. I didn't understand it then, but now I know he never submitted my real birth details. Once, I went digging through an old box in the attic looking for my baby photos for a school project. All I found were a few random snapshots, me around age 5 or 6, nothing before that. I asked him where the rest were. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Those old pictures got ruined in a flood." But we never had a flood. After that, he became more protective. He'd check my phone, tell me not to talk to strangers online, not to post photos, not to give anyone our address. He said it was because the world was dangerous, because people couldn't be trusted. But now, I wonder if he was afraid of being found. Still, back then, I brushed it all off. He was my dad, the man who built my science fair projects from scrap metal, who stayed up with me when I was sick, who clapped the loudest at my graduation. How could I ever suspect him of anything worse than loving me too much? It wasn't until the night I found the box, the one I wasn't supposed to see, that everything began to crumble. It was late, the kind of quiet where you can hear the house breathing. I was looking for an old flashlight in his workbench drawer when I noticed something strange. The back panel wasn't attached right. The wood was slightly uneven, like it had been forced back into place. I pried it open, and behind it was a small metal box, old, dusty, with my name written on the lid in black marker. My hands were trembling as I opened it. Inside were newspaper clippings, photos, documents, things that didn't make sense. And that's when I saw it, a grainy photo of a little boy under a headline that read, "Child abducted from local park, police continue search." The boy looked about 4 or 5 years old. Same eyes, same smile, same scar above the eyebrow, the one I always thought came from falling off my bike. I felt the world tilt beneath me. The box slipped from my hands and hit the floor, scattering the clippings across the cold concrete. My chest tightened, my vision blurred. It couldn't be real. It shouldn't be real. But it was. And suddenly all those small moments, the silence, the overprotection, the way he flinched when I asked about the past, they weren't just odd anymore. They were warning signs. That night, for the first time in my life, I looked at the man I called Dad and realized I didn't actually know who he was. It started with a noise I wasn't supposed to hear. A soft click in the middle of the night, followed by the faint creak of a floorboard in the hallway. At first, I thought it was nothing. Our old house made sounds, wood expanding, pipes sighing. But that night, the sound didn't fade. It moved. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Then the sound of a drawer opening. I peeked out from my room. The hallway light was off, but a faint glow leaked from under my father's door, a thin, golden line against the darkness. He was up again. That wasn't unusual. Sometimes he'd stay awake working on paperwork or tinkering with his tools. But this felt different. There was a tension in the air, like the house itself was holding its breath. I crept closer, bare feet on cold floorboards, careful not to make a sound. The door was slightly open. Through the narrow crack, I saw him kneeling by his desk, not fixing something, not reading, but opening a hidden drawer built underneath. I had never seen that drawer before. He pulled out something wrapped in a faded cloth, looked at it for a long time, and then tucked it back in before locking the drawer again. His movements were slow, precise, almost ritualistic. He didn't see me. I stepped back into the darkness, my heart hammering. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, he acted like nothing happened. He made pancakes again, burnt like always, and joked about how I should learn to cook before I end up starving in college. I laughed, but it didn't feel right. His eyes were calm, but now I noticed things I never had before. How his smile never reached his eyes. How he always positioned himself between me and the front door like instinct. And when I left for school that morning, he watched me walk all the way down the street. That night, when I came home, I went straight to his office. I told myself I just wanted to see what was in that drawer, to get rid of the feeling that was eating me from the inside out. The desk was locked. The drawer was hidden well, almost invisible. But my father was predictable. He kept all his keys in the same place. A tin box under the sink, mixed with bolts and old receipts. My hands were shaking as I opened the lock. Inside the hidden drawer were 3 things. A small photo, a folded newspaper clipping, and a silver locket. The photo was old, a woman and a young child. The woman's face was half torn away, but the child looked exactly like me. Not similar, identical. Same haircut, same crooked front tooth, same scar on the chin. I flipped the photo over. In faded ink, someone had written, Eli, age 5, summer before he went missing. My heart stopped. The newspaper clipping was worse. It was from almost 12 years ago. The headline read, Local child still missing, police continue search. And beneath it, that same face again. My face. I dropped everything. My mean spoon. Was this a mistake? Was it a coincidence? But deep down, something cracked. Something I'd been holding together for years without even knowing it. All the things that never made sense. The missing birth certificate, the way he'd shut down when I asked about my mother, how we moved every few years like we were always starting over. It all fit together now like jagged pieces of a broken mirror finally aligning. My father wasn't my father. I heard the front door open downstairs. The sound of his boots on the floor. I barely had time to shove the drawer shut before his voice echoed through the house. Hey kiddo, you home? My throat was dry. Yeah, I called back, trying to sound normal. He paused. You okay? I'm fine, I said too quickly. Another pause. Then his voice softened, careful, deliberate. Good. Dinner in a bit, okay? His tone was calm. Too calm. I could almost hear the unspoken part behind it, he knows. That night, I couldn't look at him the same way. Every smile felt like a lie, every gesture rehearsed. He sat across the table, eating quietly, pretending nothing had changed. But his eyes kept flicking toward me, watching, waiting. And I realized he was trying to see what I knew. When he finally said goodnight, I didn't sleep. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, clutching that photo under my pillow. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I was safe in my own home. I stopped looking at him the same way after that night. But I also couldn't stop pretending. For days, I told myself it was all a misunderstanding, that there had to be some explanation. Maybe the photo was fake. Maybe it was someone else who just looked like me. Maybe he had a reason. That word, reason became my anchor. Because if there wasn't one, then everything I knew about my life was a lie. He seemed normal enough at first. He went to work. He called me kiddo. He asked about school. But the more I tried to act like nothing was wrong, the more he watched me. Closely. It wasn't just paranoia. It was the way his eyes lingered a second too long, like he was reading my thoughts. One evening, I came home late from school. He was already sitting at the kitchen table, the lights off except for the glow of a small lamp. He didn't say a word when I walked in, just looked at me. "You've been quiet lately," he said finally, his voice calm but low. I shrugged. "Just school stuff." He nodded slowly, his fingers tapping against the tabletop. "You sure?" "Yeah." Then he smiled, that same careful smile that used to make me feel safe. "Good. You know you can tell me anything, right? We don't keep secrets in this house." The words hung between us like a warning. That night, I locked my door for the first time. A few days later, I went back to the drawer. The photo and clipping were gone. Every trace of what I'd found gone. I stood there in silence, the empty drawer mocking me. He knew. The next morning, I woke to the sound of his voice downstairs. He was on the phone, whispering urgent. I pressed my ear against the door. "Yeah, I think he saw it," he said. A pause. "No, I handled it. He won't go anywhere." My stomach turned. I waited until he left for work, then packed a bag. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. But when I reached for the front door, the chain was on. From the outside, he had locked me in. That's when I realized I wasn't his son. I was his prisoner. That evening, he came home like nothing happened. He brought takeout, joked about dinner, told me to eat up. But his eyes never left me. Every sound, every movement was suffocating. When he reached across the table to hand me a napkin, I flinched. He noticed. "Eli," he said softly. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," I said. My voice cracked. He tilted his head, studying me. "You're scared of me." "I'm not." He smiled, almost sad. "Yes, you are." Silence stretched until it felt unbearable. Then he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "I know what you found," he said finally. My chest tightened. "I was going to tell you when you were ready," he continued, his tone almost gentle. "But you went digging where you shouldn't have." I wanted to scream, to run, to demand the truth. But all I could do was whisper, "Who am I?" He didn't answer at first. He just stared at me like I was some fragile thing he'd accidentally dropped. Finally, he said, "You're my son. I made you mine. And that's all that should matter. I'm not your son." His hand slammed against the table, rattling the dishes. "Don't say that," he hissed. "You don't understand what they were going to do to you, how they treated you. I saved you. Saved me." He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. But all I could think about was the woman in the photo, the one whose face was torn away. "Who is she?" I asked. "My real mother?" His eyes flickered, then hardened. "She didn't deserve you." The room felt smaller, the air thicker. I stood up, chair scraping the floor. "You took me," I said quietly. "You stole me." He shook his head slowly. "No, I rescued you." He reached for me then, not violently but desperate, pleading. "Eli, you have to believe me. I gave you a better life. I gave you love." I stepped back. His hand froze midair, trembling. And for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, fear that I'd leave. That night, I waited until he fell asleep on the couch. I crept down the hallway, clutching my backpack. The front door was locked again, but this time I was ready. I found the key where he always left it, in his jacket pocket. The sound of the door unlatching was deafening. I opened it just enough to feel the cool night air hit my face. For a second, I hesitated. I looked back, at the home I'd grown up in. The man who'd raised me, loved me, lied to me. Then I stepped out. The door closed behind me with a soft click. And that's the moment my life, my real life, finally began. When I left that night, I didn't have a plan. Just fear, and a backpack full of questions I didn't want to ask. The road stretched ahead, cold and endless. Every passing car light felt like an accusation, every sound like footsteps behind me. I walked for miles until I found a bus station. I didn't even know where I was going, just away. Away from him. I used to think running away was something kids did when they didn't get their way. But this wasn't rebellion. It was survival. The first few days were a blur. I slept in cheap motels, lived off vending machines. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting him to show up and drag me home, to that place that never really was home at all. Then I remembered the newspapers, the ones I'd seen him hide years ago, old, yellowed pages stuffed in a box under his bed. Back then, I thought they were just junk. But now I wasn't so sure. I found a local library, the kind that still smelled like dust and ink. The computers were old, the kind that hummed louder than they worked, but I didn't care. I typed in what little I knew: missing children, the town I grew up in, the year I was born. It didn't take long. A headline popped up that made my heart stop. Local child abducted, family pleads for help. The photo was grainy, faded, but the face, it was mine. My fingers trembled on the mouse. The article said I was taken from a playground when I was 4 years old. My parents, my real parents, had searched for years, never giving up. The man the police suspected was never found. I read every line like it was a blade cutting into something soft inside me. The dates lined up, the location, even the scar near my ear that I'd always asked him about, the one he said I got from falling off a bike. It was in the photo. He took me. My father, the man who raised me, fed me, hugged me when I cried, had stolen me from another life. I don't remember crying. I just remember sitting there, staring at that old computer screen while the library lights flickered overhead. Everything I'd ever loved turned to smoke. I found more. An old address. A last known contact for my biological family. The article said they'd moved states years ago, but I had to try. I took a train using the little money I had left. I remember watching the towns blur by outside the window, each one feeling like it could have been home if things had been different. It was late evening when I reached the neighborhood. A quiet street lined with oak trees. I found the address from the article, an old white house with chipped paint and a porch swing. An older woman answered the door. She had tired eyes and a soft voice. I asked for my mother by name, my real mother's name. She looked at me for a long, silent moment. Then she said, "She doesn't live here anymore," but I knew her. My chest tightened. "Do you know where she went?" The woman hesitated. "She passed away a few years ago. Never stopped looking for you, though. Not until the day she died." The world fell quiet. Not the kind of quiet that's peaceful, the kind that makes everything inside you crumble. She let me sit for a while. Made me tea. Showed me an old box of newspaper clippings and photos my real mother had left behind. There was one picture, me as a toddler sitting on her lap. The same eyes. The same smile. I didn't even recognize myself. For the first time, I realized I'd been living someone else's version of me. And yet, even as I sat there holding that picture, I couldn't stop thinking about him. The man who took me. The man who raised me. Because as much as I wanted to hate him, part of me still felt like a scared child waiting for his dad to come find him. That's the worst part about love. It doesn't disappear just because it's poisoned. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on that porch swing, watching the stars fade into morning, wondering how many other lives were built on lies just like mine. Tomorrow, I decided I'd go back, not to forgive him, but to hear the truth from his own mouth. Because now I knew what he'd done. I just didn't know why. The sun rose slow that morning, like it didn't want to touch the truth I'd found. I sat there for hours, staring at that photograph, wondering how many memories had been stolen from me before I was even old enough to make them. I didn't want to go back, but I needed to. I needed to see him one last time, not to forgive, not to understand, but to make him look me in the eyes and say it. The house felt smaller when I returned. The curtains were drawn, the lights dim. For the first time, I noticed how quiet it was, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. He was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in. No surprise, no panic. Just silence. His face looked old or worn. Maybe mine did too. "You found out," he said softly. I nodded. I couldn't speak. Every word I wanted to say had already burned up inside me. He sighed and looked away, his hands trembling. "They didn't deserve you," he whispered. "You were alone at that park. No one was watching you. I couldn't." "You couldn't what?" I snapped. "You couldn't walk away?" He didn't answer. "You lied to me," I said. "My entire life, every story, every memory, you built them out of nothing." He looked at me then, eyes filled with something between guilt and love. "I gave you everything I could," he said. "I raised you, fed you, protected you. I loved you." I swallowed hard. "You loved what you stole." He reached out, but I stepped back. I didn't even realize I was shaking until I saw my hands. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The clock ticked in the background, slow and steady, like it was counting down the last seconds of a life that was never real. Finally, I said, "I found her picture. My mother." His eyes softened. "She was beautiful," he murmured. "You looked just like her." That broke something in me, not because it was cruel, but because it was true. I turned to leave, and his voice cracked behind me. "I know you'll hate me forever," he said, "but I'd do it again, because I couldn't lose another child." I froze in the doorway. I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't want to know. I just walked away. The air outside felt different, lighter, but emptier too. I didn't know where I was going, or who I was supposed to be now. All I knew was that somewhere out there, a version of me was supposed to grow up in another home, with another name, and another life. And that version never got the chance. If you were in my shoes, and you found out the person who tucked you in at night, who wiped your tears, who called you my child, had stolen you from another life, would you see them as a monster? Or would some part of you still see the person who raised you, who loved you, even if that love was built on a lie? And if love itself can come from a crime, what does that make me? The victim? The proof? Or just the reminder that sometimes even the people who save you are the ones you need saving from? And if you watched up to this point, I want to say thank you for supporting my channel. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. What you would do if you found out your father was never your father but your captor. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you, and see you on the next one.